Steering wheel, somebody tell him to give it to me.
There's something loose between my legs.
I don't know. Let go!
I'm heavier than a freaking boat.
Nothing you could say could make that any better.
Yeah, nobody. No more radio for the rest of the race.
I'm going home.
Hello and welcome to DRSFC, an F1 podcast by soccer nerds. I'm a soccer nerd. I am Donald. I'm here with two fellow soccer nerds, my friends. First of all, Ebony, how are you doing this evening?
Great. It was a wild, fun race. And now we have 5 weeks to think about it. So
Right. Unfortunately, we have 5 weeks to think about it. We have a nice little break here, and we're getting started with this review. Deepti is my other soccer friend. How are you?
I'm okay, Donald, but actually I want to ask, how are you? I know you've had a rough, 24, 48 hours.
We weren't going to talk about it on the show. I have another podcast for that where I let that go. In case you're wondering, my Dukies are out of both the men's and women's tournament in the same day. I was at one of the games. It was not a fun Sunday for me, but I will say it started off. I stayed up for the race, so at least the race part was fun to watch, and the rest of the Sunday we're just gonna let that go eventually.
All right.
I hate UConn. Anyway, enough basketball. We're going to switch to the racing. I was about to say soccer. We're going to talk about the racing here. We're going to talk about the Japanese Grand Prix. Of course, as we mentioned, the third race of the year, but the final one before this artificial 5-week break that is now upon us. And let's first start out with what happened. Kimi won again, and he is now the youngest driver to ever, at any point, lead the Drivers' Championship standings, which I think is really cool. Oscar was second. He actually did the recon lap, he did the formation lap, and then he finished second. This is what happens when you actually start the race, Oscar. And Charles was third. We have George fourth, Lando fifth, and Lewis was sixth. And we have two DNFs, Ollie Behrman, which we will talk about probably extensively, and Lance Stroll.
I forgot about that last one.
Right.
That was kind of a given.
Yeah. We will say that there was an Aston Martin that saw the checkered flag, although they were Alonso was a lap down when that checker flag was waved. So we'll discuss whether that means he finished the race, but as at least a better showing for Aston Martin than we are used to seeing so far in this year. But let's talk first about the youngie. Let's talk about Kimi winning another race. There was a nice start where it felt like there was some. There was a back and forth for a few laps, and then all of a sudden he just kind of took off. You have some of the. There was a safety car that allowed some people to come in and get some new tires, and I think almost everybody did a one-stop strategy in this race, which I think really allowed Kimi to kind of, once his tires were at temperature, Kid was gone.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the
one-stop strategy,
the safety car issue, and everything that came along with that. Because, as you know, so at the beginning of the race, Ferrari immediately took off, every time. And Oscar, that was such a fun little exchange in that first turn. And I don't know if George is already feeling the pain of having Kimi as his number two, but it's becoming very apparent that if he's not gone by the end of this year to sign with someone else, he's no longer going to be the number one driver at Mercedes. Deepti has said it. I have said it. We have talked about it extensively in our chat, and now we're doing it on the pod. Kimi is getting more confident with every race, and it's so fun to watch. But the whole thing surrounding the safety car, with George panicking and going in before, and then immediately, after he comes out the pit, it's a safety car, and then everybody else is like, oh, great, now we can go in. And it just kind of ruins his whole well, I don't want to say ruins his race, because he definitely could have done more in terms of his battles. But then he wants to cry on the radio hey, is Kimi gonna
Is Kimi gonna
Yo,
do another
Go
one
when
of
we
those
said
stuff?
he would go?
practice.
Yeah.
That was like that is so cringe of you, George.
Well, I also think for me, I think I'm the one in our group that has not been fully on board with Kimi taking over as number one if both of them stay in Mercedes next year. But what I also said was that was given the information we had at the time, and the information we had at the time was Kimi wouldn't beat George in anything. So there's no reason for that to happen other than just hope and faith. The more this happens, the more that he wins races and outperforms his teammate, that's when you can start gathering that evidence that we're in the sport. We can gather the data and go, this is the evidence here. This is me showing that I am a better driver in this car. So I should be the number one driver. I should have all this stuff going on. And as we get going, I wonder what this 5 weeks does to him, to Kimi, because that's a long break, and he's had a lot of momentum built over the first month of the season, and I think we all would like that to sustain. But a gap was always going to mean that some teams are going to come back, and it's one of those breaks. It's not the summer break where they can't do work. It's one where stuff can still be tinkered with. So I'm wondering if he can sustain that momentum. If he can, then I think, Deepti, that evidence starts to build that you go, hey, maybe he is the one.
Mm-hmm. Um, I remember, if you guys remember, Megan, she was like, "Oh, this year we're gonna learn the Italian anthem because we're gonna be hearing it a lot on the podium." She was obviously talking about Ferrari, but she's not wrong because we've already heard it 2 out of 3 times.
Twice.
Yeah. For Kimi Antonelli, he's the one who's gonna put the Italian anthem up there a lot more. But I mean, you're right. Like, we even saw at the end of the Chinese Grand Prix where, he's never won a race before, and he could have lost it right at the end. He, maybe was too in his head or getting too ahead of himself before he even finished the race and could have screwed up. He saved himself obviously and finished. We didn't see that this time. He was way more cool, calm, and collected. Like, Bono maybe had to keep him cool for a little bit, but you didn't see any mess ups, even after he was so far ahead, and he kept putting in the fastest times. It's not like he was letting off or anything, and so I think that already shows a little bit of growth in in a week or 2 weeks. Right now, I think Kimi's true weakness is just the starts. And I think it's really funny, he's so young, so he's probably never had to drive too much with clutch. And Toto was like, yeah, you young kids all drive automatic. That's how you're taught. You're never taught to how to use a clutch and manual. And he's like, we're gonna work on that over this break. And so if he does pick that up, and I think yes, George is a more experienced driver. He probably, without all these strategy mishaps, and there was a bit of luck involved too with the safety car and whatnot, George still has the upper hand, I think. But give it a few weeks, half a season, I think Kimi could catch up real quick. And every track is so different too, and I think this track favors Kimi. He's always he's like this track. Last year he did really well on it, and then same with Miami coming up in over a month. I think, even though it will be a long break, I think that's a good track for him to come back on, because he generally likes that one. And last year he was a bit stronger on Miami's track than Russell.
I think the one thing also that we're kind of keeping track of now, because we have to, is he did not have champagne on the podium in Japan because he was not yet of age. He will not be of age in Miami either, so he will get the sparkling cider there. I think the next time would be the Canadian Grand Prix that he would be eligible for champagne on the podium. Also, a point of note that we will bring up again in Miami: not eligible to go to Tootsie's either after the race. I don't.
They would give him an exception.
It is Miami. I know some people. I could probably set that up for him, but hey, rules are rules, man. I can only do so much to help the kid out. But no, I think the fact that the starts aren't even, in my mind, that bad. It's not like he's getting dusted off the line. He did in this particular race, but if he could just get to be decent with him starting in first or second basically every single time, he doesn't need to be the fastest off the line. He just needs to be maybe slightly faster than George, which that can at least help him withstand where he's entering that first turn in first, second, or third. And then we've seen the Mercedes car itself just have enough juice to eventually get to the top. I think that's the main key here for him. But he's hooping, kid is hooping, and it's fun to see. And it seems like, at least to me, it seems like he's having fun with it out there. Ebony, anything else about the actual, just like the lineup of the races from first, second, and third?
From first, second, third, no. I'm so proud of Gasly.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Hoop,
Like
the hoopster.
he's phenomenal. This is a wild turn of events. Like, I was not prepared for the Alpine resurgence for 2026. And I probably should have been, because it looked like they had given up last year. I will say that 100%. It looked like they gave up. But it looks like they gave up for good reasons, and it's being shown on the track. Like, they're not having the same problems that Williams is having, even though Williams also said they were giving up and they were going to focus on 2026. Same thing with Aston Martin. They also said they were giving up and focusing on 2026. Alpine is the only one that has actually shown that they said that they were giving up on that car to focus on 2026 and actually produce something. Now, when we talk about like our Zoomy and Gloomy, and when I remember me saying that, this track does really well, lends itself to like Audi and Ferrari, and then that didn't happen. Like, they looked like they were going to do super well, especially after practice number 2 and number 3, and then it just kind of downhill from there. And I know we're going to talk about Behrman in a second. But that car is surprising, I think, a lot of people. And you know how we were talking about the best of the middle of the pack? That's Alpine right now. So I'm super happy. Baby Bulls out racing Red Bull. That's also a battle that's been super fun, kind of.
Hajar and Lindblad. Well, Hajar hates Lindblad now. I don't know how Lindblad feels about Hajar, but Hajar, he was calling him names on the radio.
Well, Lindblad got Max thinking about retirement, actively saying it. Like, I know we've heard the thing and we still don't believe him, but like, that man did so poorly. He was like, you know what? I'm just gonna leave. Like, I'm washed up now because this little kid is beating me.
Well, Lindblad is kind of like all over the place right now, so
As he should. It's his third race.
Him battling Max in those first 2 races, and then him almost causing Hajar to crash in this race. It just was not. He's just. I get the excitement, and I still believe in the kid, but woof, he got to slow down just like half a second and like really think about what he's trying to do here. I know he's trying to get into that Red Bull seat, that senior seat, but that's not how you do it. And I'm still high on the kid. I want him to do really well, because Australia really showed that he could. I just want to see him be smart about it as well. So
just gotta be consistent.
Yeah.
That's the real deal. Deepti, I want to get you in here because I want to ask you about. I think this race had the most important lap in a very long time, and that was Oscar's recon lap. I don't think anyone's ever watched a recon lap with more scrutiny than that particular lap, just to get him on the track and like, okay, he got back to the garage, but then he stormed off the line, just like you said. He was kind of in this race, and there's a point where I think maybe for like a lap or 2 while they were kind of doing pit stops that he was leading the race, and then he finished second. He finishes on the podium the first time he did a lap in Formula One in 2026. He ends up on the podium in second. That's your boy. What do we think about how
Oscar is back, baby? And no, you're right. I thought, like, it was funny. Immediately when he finished the race, he was like, wow, we're pretty good when we get to the start, guys. All he has to do is do the recon lap. I mean, it started from qualifying. Like, he had a really good qualifying. Obviously, he qualified P3, and so P2 or P3, whatever it was. He yeah, so getting that far already gave him such a good chance. And then his start off the line was one of the best. And like from the get-go, he led initially until, the back and forth that we talked about. I think it's really good. I'm surprised that they actually did so well. Like Suzuka is maybe a little bit harder to overtake on. So like, once someone overtakes, then the person behind immediately gets like that boost or overtake to go again. Um, but just in general, like McLaren as a whole showed a lot more than I was expecting. Lando didn't have like the greatest of weekends, but I'm impressed with how his race went, given that for in like practice and even in qualifying, I don't think he even strung like two full out laps together back to back until the race. So managing to like finish in P5 and even have a little bit of that battle with like Lewis at the end, that also showed some promise. But yeah, I think one thing that I'm like curious about, and obviously these are a lot of what ifs, and like that safety car situation will come into play. But I follow Ruth Buscombe on Instagram, and like she's the former strategy person for Ferrari. She worked at Haas, I think Sauber as well. But she did like a little strategy debrief, and basically was like, okay, if Oscar had not pit after like I think it was Norris pit and then Russell pit and whatever. They were basically like, if Oscar didn't pit, he probably could have actually won this race because Antonelli would have still been a few cars behind. He would have had to like maybe he would have taken over, but also Oscar's good at defending, so he might have been able to hold him off. All this data that she shows is that McLaren kind of made the wrong decision, in her opinion, about when to pit, and they could have waited because his tires were not going. He was actually getting stronger. There was no one to like cover the undercut or anything, and so there was no threat behind him of who could like overtake and lose P1. And so that might have been something to change and like one of the what ifs. But even so, just getting to a point where even getting P2 is like disappointing almost is so good for McLaren at this point in the season. And it's good that it only took them like 2 or 3 races to kind of figure it out, hopefully.
And as Lando's the defending champion. They're the defending constructors champion. And for the first 2 races, everyone was kind of like, "Oh yeah, McLaren's kind of off the side. We're not looking up at them." And I think McLaren has to get back to the business of we are the champions, and you should be fearing us. Mercedes and Ferrari may have good cars too, but we're the top dogs. They need to drive like that. I thought Oscar had a great race. I want to get to the main part of like our things to discuss, which is the crash that Ollie Behrman had. First of all, it was I think he was coming up on the back of Franco Colapinto. Franco Colapinto was kind of doing one of those stops to kind of harvest energy, so it kind of dropped speed very quickly as he was approaching the turn. Behrman kind of swerves to get around him, but then he catches the grass and basically rides the grass and slips and slides for about, 300 meters until he hit the wall at an impact of over 50 Gs. Now, G-force is something that a lot of people don't understand, but let me tell you what that means. A G is like your body weight. So if something's 5 Gs, it's 5 times your body weight. 50 times Ollie Behrman's body weight is the force of 7,450 pounds. That is not good. That is a very dangerous thing. He walked away from it, albeit he was limping and needed some assistance to get back to the paddock. He was walking around the paddock afterwards a little gingerly, but he wasn't like he was on crutches or anything like that. But Ebony, I'll go to you first. Your overall thoughts on it, because I mean it was a dangerous situation, and a lot of people have started to kind of link the new regulations with blame for this crash.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of like, reels, and I've been hearing a lot of people talk about like it's the regulations' fault and all that stuff. And I'm like, the regulations don't make Colapinto brake super early and then move under braking into the middle of the track for no reason, causing Ollie Behrman to swerve out of the way so he didn't get hit in a worse way. Like hitting in the barrier, yeah, that's bad. But hitting Colapinto and then hitting a barrier is worse. I think that's worse. So yeah, you could put some of the blame on some of the regulations, and that's what the regulations are for. Like the FIA does this where they can like, update it as they go. People are saying like they aren't listening to the teams or anything. I'm like, yeah, they are. They listen to Max cry every week for the last 7 weeks from testing all the way through this race. Okay, they hear you, but you got to also put some of that on Colapinto. Like he did a dumb, dangerous thing on the track, which you don't think was dumb and dangerous because you're like, oh well, he was by himself. That's when you make the biggest mistakes is you slowed down in a very compromising spot and then you moved into the racing line in a very slow speed and then you didn't look around you because you just assumed that you were still by yourself. You're on a racetrack, people are coming at you very fast. That's what pisses me off is like and everybody wants to blame the regs because they don't like this new style of racing, and I'm like, you have to actually also use logic and look at the facts around you. Like that's how I felt about the whole thing. Like, I'm glad he's okay though.
Yeah. First and foremost, glad he's okay. I know they mentioned like, oh, it wasn't no fractures or anything. I hope they do a full check because like you can very easily be concussed and everything, and like
Oh
internal
yeah.
bleeding and whatnot. And so I'm sure they will, and like hopefully he has a full recovery before Miami. But I mean, I agree with you for the most part. Like, I don't think it's fully on the regs, but I think there is some danger to the new regs while they're still like figuring out the cars. And there's going to be more danger with these first few weeks than there is like probably later on in the season because they're just not used to all of it yet.
Really
And
fair.
basically, like what caused it kind of was like the super clipping thing, right? And we like super clipping is when, at the end of like a full throttle straight, the car just suddenly decreases speed like super, super fast. And so the person behind, if they're coming also at full throttle speed, doesn't have a lot of time to like maneuver around the car that stopped or whatever to react basically. Luckily here there was like more of a runoff area. So maybe that actually took away some of the force and the impact. But I just remember like Carlos Sainz talked a lot about it afterwards and was just saying like the drivers have like mentioned to FIA about how this is a possibility. And, if it was at another track like Singapore or Baku or like Las Vegas, where there's not a lot of runoff, it could have been like an even worse crash for Ollie. That being said, like, yeah, FIA had put out a statement, maybe they're going to adjust the regulations or do something. I'm not really sure what they can really do to change everything. Like, I feel like that's just a feature of the batteries and the engines that they've decided to implement. But I think it is also on the drivers, like, if they once super clipping does happen, to just move to the right. Like it happened to George as well during this race, and like he just moved off the racing line, so Charles was able to go alongside him and take the place without any like they didn't touch, they didn't hit, no crash, anything. So part of it was on Colapinto maybe for staying on the racing line and not reacting fast enough to go off the racing line. But also like obviously they're going at like 200 miles an hour. So like how fast can you really do something? But yeah, I think it is a bit of both.
It's I think I agree with both of you in the sense that Colapinto probably was unaware and should have been more aware of his surroundings when he was super clipping and doing what he was doing, and as you said, Ebony, moving into the racing line at a shortened, a very quick, short amount of speed. I also think, in a way, like kudos to Ollie for getting out of the way because last year's Ollie would not have gotten out of the way in time. That would have been a very serious crash between two drivers. Probably would have been a red flag, that sort of thing. And as you mentioned, Deepti, if it's in Baku or one of these or Singapore, one of these street races, it absolutely would have been a wall very, very quickly. It would have been at a high rate of speed. It would have been a higher amount of G force, and it would have stopped the race. And we would have been talking about a potential very serious injury. So I think the medical marvels of the safety part are what the FIA need to address in this break. And unlike a regulation change, a safety change can come immediately in my mind. They don't have to wait for some arbitrary week to implement a safety feature. So hopefully they can review the data that they have from that crash and just throughout all the races and say, okay, this is where super clipping is okay. This is where super clipping is not okay. Those sort of things to make it where these guys can be safe. They can still obviously do it because that's part of the new regulations, but in a way where it would prevent this from ever happening in the same way again, and make it again. Even sure, you can't avoid crashes in this sport. That's part of the deal, but you can try to make everything as safe as possible, and that's where I think the FIA needs to really take a serious look now that they have this big break to kind of go through things.
I will say there are a few disappointments. I mean, you alluded to this earlier, but I'm kind of disappointed in Audi how, during qualifying, they seemed to be doing pretty well, and like especially in the final sector, and like Nico and Gabby both were going relatively fast, like for their car too. And then they just like didn't show up in this race. So I think, yes, we had like a lot of stuff happen in the top half of the grid, but there were also a lot of things happening in the back that, maybe a bit of switch ups between like bottom of the table, which was interesting. I do think overall teams are catching up to Mercedes, and then the mid table scuffle, or the mid, like in the middle of the grid, there also going to be some like movement there. So, I mean, it's only been 3 weeks, but I think we are seeing a bit more parity across the grid.
I also think if we're talking about the bottom of the grid for a second, I am still a little surprised that the gaps between the bottom and the top are still so significant. I figured at a certain point we'd be getting down to, everybody, like last year, it felt like everybody was in like a second and a half. Maybe you had a stroll in like at 2 seconds, right? But most people were within a second and a half of the leader on a qualifying lap, and now we're still looking at 4, 5, sometimes 6 seconds between the bottom and the top. So I am still surprised that there is that gap, and maybe that is because of the way that these cars were developed, and some engines are clearly just not ready for prime time. We kind of expected that with Cadillac coming into it. But I think Audi, the one thing they're going to have to deal with is a little bit of inconsistency. They have a great week, a couple weeks ago. This week, not so great. For them to kind of move into that 4, 5, 6 competition, consistency is going to be the key. That's how Williams was able to vault up to fifth last year. Is they've just, they got a couple of podiums, but they were just otherwise both of them getting points almost every single week and just remaining consistent in that regard. Audi is going to have to figure that out with Nico and with Gabby as this moves along. But at least they're in good shape. It seems like for a powertrain that's only theirs, right? They're the only ones using it. It seems like Audi's powertrain is holding up against some of the better ones. So that leaves it with a chance. It's not like Cadillac's, where right now Cadillac is Cadillac's not getting their own powertrain, but it's clear that whatever, other tweaks that they have just aren't as good or up to snuff with the rest of the field. And that's okay because they're an expansion team and this was expected from them. So the rising tide is not lifting all ships so far in the season, but that could obviously be something that that improves as the season goes along. Let's take a quick break. We're going to get to our review of our predictions. We'll also give out our Zoomy and Gloomy Boy award winners. So stick around. We are back. All right. It is time to get into our favorite part of a review, which is looking at what we predicted and seeing how right or wrong we are. And then later on, we will also give out our Zoomy Boy and our Gloomy Boy awards. But let's start with the podium prediction review, just to make sure you're aware. Kimi was first, Oscar was second, and Charles was third in this race. I'm going to start with you, Deepti, because you're at the top of this list right here. So that's the only reason we're starting you. You had Kimi winning, so that's good. You had Lewis second, and unfortunately, you had Ollie third.
I jinxed him.
It happens.
Yeah.
Oh,
Starting with
Poor Ollie.
qualifying, he like even the qualifying was horrendous and that's just all around bad.
I
But
think it
I'm
was
sorry,
like 2
Ollie.
a.m. It was like 2 a.m. on a Saturday. You were like, yeah, I already messed him up. Like
Yep.
we hadn't even got to qualify yet. Like I already messed my man up. I'm sorry. Andre had George, Charles, and Lewis. Charles finished. He had Charles in second, so at least Charles made the podium. I had Lewis, George, and Charles. I was right on just one of them. I got Charles exactly right, and George let me down. Lewis, you never let me down, but he was a little bit further back. Uh, Kyle had Kimi, Lewis, and Max. Of course, he picked Kimi winning, which is good for him. And Ebony, you have Charles, Lewis, and Kimi. So you got two of the three, and you got to switch them around. And Lewis was the only miss there.
which is wild because he was like sort of doing pretty well, and then like those last like 10 laps just kind of
Yeah,
like
it's kind of
broke
wasn't
down.
left
Yeah.
wanting.
Yeah, I was like, what's happening right now?
Yeah, it
Absolutely
was.
could have gotten second or third. Like,
And it was interesting because there was a point where he was faster than Charles.
yeah.
And then I think right after the pit stop, it was just like he just didn't have as much juice, despite the fact that he had newer tires. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting thing I'm sure they'll look at. But he seemed upbeat about everything and he was right there until, like you said, the last few laps. Let's get to the constructor scrap review. We'll say our most points on the weekend was, of course, Mercedes. We in the off or I'm sorry, in the break, we might discuss if it's time to declare Mercedes the front runner and take them out of the equation. The least points were Aston Martin, Cadillac, Audi, and Williams. All of them with 0 points, although you probably know which ones were furthest to the bottom, that being Aston Martin and Cadillac. Kyle predicted his most was Ferrari because he said, I'm assuming we can't say Mercedes. And then the least he said was Cadillac because he was assuming we can't say Aston Martin. So if he said what he wanted, he would have been exactly right, but he
Yeah, I was
didn't.
gonna say, do
He
we
picked
give him
Ferrari.
points for
We don't give
Mercedes
him points.
or
We'll give him points for assumptions. So that's that. I had Ferrari and Aston Martin. Ferrari was close, but it was Mercedes. Aston Martin is still a free space until again we determine whether that is illegal moving forward. Andre had Ferrari and Williams. Again, almost there. A lot of Ferrari picks for most. I think a lot of people are trying to say, well, I'm not going to pick Mercedes this time. I'm going to go with someone else. It was Mercedes. But Williams is a good pull for Andre. Deep D, you had most as Mercedes and least as Cadillac. And Cadillac, if Aston Martin was in the free space,
It
my
became
Cadillac boys would probably be the free space.
yeah, unfortunately.
And Ebony, rounding this off, Ebony, you picked Ferrari as your most, unfortunately, but you did have Williams for your least. So good on you for that.
you know, you just know when it's bad is bad.
Exactly. I will say now these predictions have a lot more pressure on them because our friend of the pod, David, has been tracking them and giving us
All
points
right.
based on how well we do.
Forgot about the points.
Yes. So
This is very cool that we're doing this. We should consider maybe having some sort of trophy at the end.
yeah.
For like whoever is like as a what is it, a Lance Stroll? One of us gets like whoever wins gets the Zoomy Boy award, and whoever loses gets the
Let's
Gloomy
roll, see.
gets the Lance Stroll Memorial.
That's crazy.
And it's just the emoji of someone of a man dancing with Stroll's face on it. That's all it is. So let's get to our Zoomy and Gloomy Boy. Of course, if you were first timer, welcome. But Zoomy Boy is who we thought balled out on the weekend. Who was, it didn't have to be the fastest driver, didn't have to be the person who won. It could be someone who you thought exceeded expectations or otherwise had a good weekend. Same thing for Gloomy. You don't have to look towards the bottom. We've had people at the top end up with the Gloomy Award because sometimes people have bad weekends and still finish second or third. Hi, Oscar, last year. Many races, unfortunately. So let's start with you, Deepti. Who do you got for Gloomy and then your Zoomy?
Yeah, Gloomy. So for these, I tried to go not with people right at the top or right at the bottom, but Gloomy, I went with Audi, like we said. I think they were showing a bit of promise. They did pretty well in qualifying, and they were fast, especially in that third sector. They always got the fastest times in that third sector, which is crazy. But yeah, they didn't show anything for it. Like you said, they didn't get any points this weekend. So yeah, both of them are gloomy boys for me this weekend. And then my Zoomy, I think I can see a theme in our doc of what who's choosing who, but I went with Fernando Alonso because you know what? He finished a race. He saw the checkered flag. So you'll get a Zoomy
Did
boy
he?
for that.
He was
Excuse me.
lapped
Saw
down.
one. He saw
Okay,
one.
but he saw one and like, okay, one lap. He could have done that one lap. Like it's not like he was like 20 laps down like that time Lance came back and saw a checkered
I
flag.
argue that Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll have both seen checker flags. They've just been out of their car when they did it. So this time, at least he was in the car, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm sticking to that Fernando Alonso. Plus, he became a new dad. Like that also,
Okay, that's
a
cool.
little
We'll
boost.
That's fair.
we're removing the race from the Zoomy
He had a
consideration
great
from
weekend no matter what.
he became a dad. Congratulations, Fernando, the rookie, finally getting becoming a dad as well. Ebony, your Zoomy and your gloomy.
Okay, so my gloomy was George. And that's only because like the whining. Like he just like, come on, dude. You're a good driver. Just go do it. Like get her done. Like I don't know what to tell
Dude,
you.
his like even the Mercedes garage was getting pissed at him. You could tell.
Yeah. And when he was like, "Is Kimmy gonna go where we practice?" They were like, "We don't know.
Why are you asking us?
We're not Kimmy." It was the craziest part of that entire exchange on the radio. They're just like,
Yeah, I don't know. And Toto was like, "Yeah, George, fine. You had some bad luck. Just drive, dude.
right.
This happens. Just drive."
He was like, "Super unlucky. Keep going." He just would not stop. It was the funniest part about all of it. He just starts screaming into the mic like, "Ah, so unlucky!" And I'm just like,
Yeah,
okay.
he acted like he was the first person that had ever been screwed by a
Right?
safety car before.
Oh my god.
That literally made me crack up. I fell asleep on lap 2 and woke up at checkered flag. And so then I rewatched the whole thing, and I was like, "Is this really what happened in between?" Just a bunch of whining on the radio, and then him still finishing in 5th. I thought he did all that and still won the race. No. Okay.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Your Zoomy boy.
My Zoomy was Oscar.
Okay.
I love this race for him. It was like his get back race. His get back race from 2025 of showing McLaren that like, no, he's still that guy. And he's going to prove it to you this year. And his get back of like actually getting back on the track because he hasn't done it in 2026. So I enjoyed this performance from him. It was an old-fashioned Oscar race where he just put his head down and he drove. And he put his car in the right places. He made the right calls and just second is phenomenal for a guy that just got onto the racetrack for the first time this year. Like it was so wild to see how in George's head he was without even
Mhm.
having to like do much. And bothered 3 teams at once that I loved it. It was great. He had a phenomenal weekend and I'm just so proud.
So Kyle is one of the our group that roped in Zoomy and Gloomy. So his gloomy boy was Alex Albon. Did not have a good week, unfortunately. And he also had Oscar for his Zoomy boy. So sensing a theme here.
Can I say some of his radio messages were so cryptic, and like he said something, I don't remember if it was during the race or during qualifying, maybe both, but even the commentators were like, "Alex, why are you going to be cryptic?" And then not answer even like the people asking you about it afterwards. If you're going to air stuff out on the radio, just not enough for us to know. But yeah, he's not happy.
Yeah, not happy at all so far this season. So for me, my gloomy boy is Ollie. I hate doing it, but the fact I am saying this with the caveat that I'm really glad that he is relatively okay. That it's not anything serious, but that crash was very dangerous, and I think also with how well he had been performing so far in the season, this was a setback for sure for him and for Haas, because I think Haas is relying more and more on him. They did get the 1 point from Ocon, but they probably would have had multiple points from Ollie had he not crashed. He also did fairly poor at just like free practice qualifying. Just not a great week for him. My Zoomy is also Oscar. I say that because one, he got through the recon lap. He was basically in contention that happened, but to be able to say, one, hey, McLaren has re-arrived. We're back. We could challenge these guys. And two, him out hooping Lando fairly significantly, I think is a very, very big win for him, to get back on the podium, to really for him say, hey, all I got to do is get to the start line, and I can at least be out here with these guys and really contest them. And we asked ourselves whether there would be a team that would challenge Ferrari and Mercedes, or if it was just going to be 1 and 2 kind of going after each other. At least Oscar has made it where it's now a 3-person dance as opposed to a 2-man tango. So that is it. That is our Zoomy and Gloomy Boy. That is our review of the Japanese Grand Prix. And there's no more races for like 5 weeks. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to be coming up with a lot of different stuff. Stay tuned to our feed. Stay tuned to our Instagram and our social media. We're maybe going to be trying some things on, because who knows?
Why not?
We got time now.
I think we'll do Drive to Survive. I should probably finish watching it.
Oh, I can watch that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's going to be stuff for us to do, and there's going to be content for us to provide for you all out there. So thank you for listening. For Ebony, for Deepti, I'm Donald, and as always, vroom vroom.
Vroom, vroom.